Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live session titled How Results-Driven HR Leaders Overcome the Pains of Transformation. And thank you very much to each and every single person out there for joining us. Now, I'm sure many HR leaders from around the world can strongly relate to this very, very important topic. And it's probably a top organizational priority for most of you at the moment, based on how quickly the world of work is continuously evolving, and change management has very much become an integrated aspect of day-to-day business activities. So we were very keen to better understand your organization's current HR challenges and how the Top Employer Certification Program can obviously help you as organizations address some of these challenges. And when you registered for today's session, we did ask you to submit your organization's HR challenge that you're currently facing. And we received great feedback from most of you. And thank you very much for taking the time to share your challenges with us. We heard things about leadership development to HR tech and how to align HR to business strategies. And we will be taking questions at the back end of the session. So please don't wait until then. Feel free to drop your questions in the comment section at any time, and Amara and I will address them at the back end of the session. And we certainly want this to be an engaging session, so do keep those comments and questions flowing throughout the time that we are spending with you. And if you do have your please do have your smartphone on standby, because we are going to ask you to scan a couple of QR codes along the way. So this is very much an interactive session to make you as the audience feel very much part of the discussion. So,
well, I guess we need to kind of tell people who they're actually looking at. So hello, everyone. This is Amara. I'm the Director of Client Experience at Top Employers Institute. My team obviously looks after experience, but also client success and advisory. And I believe that thanks a lot for sending in a few cases that we can probably talk throughout this. So really looking forward to an engaging one today.
Super, Amara. And I think it's been a while since you and I have done a webinar together, so it's good to be reunited on this platform. And red is very much our core brand color at the Top Employers Institute, and good to see that you are very much on brand today. Like Amara said, my name is Billy Elliott.
I try my best.
You're pulling it off. My name is Billy Elliott, and I'm proud to serve as the Regional Director for Asia Pacific at the Top Employers Institute, and currently based out of Singapore, which is actually home to our regional headquarters. And looking forward to spending this next 45 minutes with you as our delegate. So thank you. So a quick introduction for those of you who are not familiar with the Top Employers Institute. And we're a global HR certification and data insights provider, surveying and auditing organizations' HR practices as opposed to internal or external opinion-based survey data. And our globally aligned certification process is indeed completed and driven by senior HR management as well as HR subject matter experts, and not by your employees. So our certification methodology is very unique. It's the only one of its kind. So this is not an employee engagement survey. This is more of a survey and audit of the HR practices that you have in place to drive an employee experience, but also to ensure that HR is very much core to driving business outcomes and objectives. And what we do is we support organizations in delivering transformational HR practices to drive business performance by supporting organizations with strategic benchmarking data and insights. And furthermore, our internationally recognized Top Employer certification helps organizations credibly strengthen their employer brand, obviously supporting your talent attraction, retention, and engagement objectives. And based on an organization's footprint, our clients can participate in a single country, they can participate regionally, or even on a global scale. And we do use one globally aligned certification methodology throughout the world. So the way we survey and audit companies in Singapore is the same way that we survey and audit companies in the United States of America, the UK, etc., because you are being measured against the standard of global HR best practice excellence. And in 2025, we certified more than 2,420 organizations spanning 125 countries throughout the world as top employers. And together, these organizations are positively impacting the lives of more than 13 million employees daily with the world-class HR practices that they have in place. And this is a key metric that we use to measure the impact of our program on a global level. So a key buzzword at the moment is transformation, and we think that this is probably the most spoken word in the world of work today. And yet it has a completely different meaning for so many, different organizations around the globe. And the range is quite broad. It could be a complete revamp of the organization with new business models at play, or a company that wants to future-proof and is looking at how they stay ahead of the game. So let's check in quickly with the audience to see what kind of transformation you are currently experiencing as a business. And there are there's a couple of answer options there for you. So you can either indicate digital AI transformation, which is very much a hot topic, cultural transformation, organizational restructuring, skills and workforce transformation, or perhaps there's something else that's impacting your organization at the moment. And please do share your input with us by going to slido.com and entering the number 3187656. And we'll give you a minute or two just to log online and share what's happening in your business. Mara, it looks like we've got our first one in organizational restructuring.
Yeah, I know. I hope everybody's cell phone's working, because we'd like to see more responses here. Don't be shy. But while we're waiting for others to join in, I think, Billy, I don't know about you, I'm sure you're experiencing the same. Every time I walk into a client conversation, it's literally like, that's the only word you hear. Like, oh, we're undergoing transformation. And then you start diving into, okay, what exactly is it that you're doing? And you find like such a broad range of the responses that come in. And I think that's also kind of reflected in these options here as well.
100%, yeah. No surprises to see digital and AI transformation all of a sudden take the lead. No surprises there. I see everyone's got their smartphones working now with the QR code, so it's good to see some more options being selected. We'll give it 20 more seconds.
Yeah. See, already I think we see the pattern emerging, right? Like obviously digital and AI transformation is kind of top of the charts here. Yeah, it like I said, every conversation that we walk into really does speak to transformation, and it always makes me think like, yeah, everybody's undergoing transformation, not all of a sudden, but you kind of these days hear it much more than ever before. And there was a study from McKinsey that I found very interesting. Like 70% of businesses right now are undergoing transformation or have undergone transformation in the last 5 years. And that's like a 30% increase from the decade before. So that really speaks to the reality of the situation we're also looking at and observing among our clients. The thing is, what is pushing this change to take place? And I think it's pretty clear one of the very, very driving forces here on the forefront is the advent of AI. But I think we shouldn't also underestimate, there's some other factors at play here as well, where you start to see there's an immense stakeholder pressure as well, whether it's like from employees or like investors or other stakeholders that the business has to deal with. So the game has kind of changed. But that also, it's interesting to see that businesses are finally realizing that the models they've been operating with haven't really kept up with the pace of change in the world. So you really need to sort of look into that. All the playbooks that you had for driving growth, they don't work the same anymore. So there's really something that needs to shift for the business to create value for its clients, right? And I think every business, no matter what industry, what sector you're in, they're going through that. But what I find really interesting is that finally, after all this time, the whole role of leadership in transformation is getting its due share of attention, but the right kind of attention, where it's becoming more of like a capability within the organization than just a project that you used to work on to drive something. Like, it would always be like, we're undergoing a multi-year transformation project, so there's like a clear beginning and possibly a clear end, but it was hardly ever sustainable. And most of them often failed. But now we already start to see that those companies that embed transformation within their operations are outperforming their competitors. And that's great. And we see this trend so much now among top employers where change capability has become a very, very key and core component of their leadership competency model, because it's almost like there's no other way around it. So when you talk about leaders, their role is so crucial to this, because they're the ones who help you enable and create this culture where you adapt, you learn, and you continuously evolve. So that should not be underestimated at any point. So we are coming from a time where it was almost like a digital project. Like I said, there's like a 5-year thing or a 2-year, 3-year thing or whatever. So we're moving towards this continuous reinvention where we are looking at how do we enable leadership, enhance the employees to continuously evolve and be okay with the change, where change is almost like embedded within the operations and it's not something that you go through in isolation. It's almost like when you look at the big picture, the pain of not changing is far greater than the pain of change itself. And that's pretty much evident in what we see among organizations, right? So moving from, hey, HR is going to manage this change. So again, very project oriented, to like creating an organization that can tackle change when it's thrown towards them, right? So creating an environment culture where people are ready for change. Another important one we see is moving from output to outcome. And what that means is it's no longer, yeah, we're going to do this activity and we're going to produce this outcome, but rather we're going through this transformation, but what's the business outcome that we're trying to achieve through it, right? There has to be sort of like a purpose to it, like a direction to it. And that's becoming really interesting to observe. I have this one example from Unilever Kilburn and Chicago, where they've set up this system where they basically review every 6 months their organizational structure, and they'll look at the roles and in their alignment with the business needs and the current availability in the talent pool. I think that's amazing, because that enables you to develop people in the right direction, because then you're moving towards the right things that the business really needs, right? And their results, the impact was very clear. They ended up with 81% of their local management homegrown, so internally promoted. I think that's beautiful. And they reduced their attrition by 68%. I think that's a really impressive number. And the only way they got to that was to enable this constant review, like, let's evaluate it constantly so we can keep up with the pace of change. So basically, transformation has become something that's not an initiative, but rather an operating model.
And Amara, sorry to interrupt you, but one of our delegates, Nikita, I think has made a very, very valuable point, and I thought I would share it with you. It's not a question, it's a comment, and I'm sure you can definitely relate to this, having been a senior HR professional once upon in your life. And Nikita said every day is now a form of transformation in our lives as HR professionals, and I think that's.
I couldn't agree more, Nikita. I think this is gonna be like the code of the day for us, because that's exactly what it is, right? It's not like, yeah, we started this and we're done with it. No, and it's not gonna stop. The pace of change is never gonna be this slow ever again, and it's going to become
part of organizational DNA. That's it.
Exactly, that's it. It just needs to become part of the routine, the everyday. And if you want to survive, it's also about survival, right? And that also means I think it was a nice segue, Nikita, to what I wanted to talk about next is what's the role of HR in the whole scheme of things now. Obviously, there's a change. We wanted a seat at the table, but hey, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So that also within HR, if we self-reflect, if we look at ourselves, that also needs to like really switch. And what we're seeing is that transformation has always sat between operations and strategy somewhat, but now the best performing organizations are not just bringing in HR to communicate change, like, hey, this is what we need to do. Now HR go do the dirty job of letting everybody know that this needs to happen. But rather they're relying on HR to bring the transformation to life, to make it real. But there is also an expectation that all the people decisions that we make will be tied to the measurable business outcomes, right? So we're sitting really at the cusp of this overlap here, the Venn diagram that you see. It's that business transformation and people transformation, bringing it all together into one, which is very interesting shift, I think. We always knew we needed to do this, but now it's becoming more and more apparent, and that's interesting too.
And just on that, Amar, I mean, business has become, business is very much focused on the quantitative aspect, and people very much on the qualitative side of things. So the question becomes, how do we bring the right balance where the qualitative aspects can be quantified into business outcomes, which is always a very, very tough question that many HR leaders are trying to answer.
Yeah, and that's what makes our job more interesting. So I think it would be nice to unpack that in a bit as well. But what we have also seen is to enable that, it's almost like a marriage of quantitative and qualitative. There are certain things that makes HR more successful in being in the driving seat of change. So being involved right from the get-go and really enabling it, right? And one of them is adaptive leadership. What that means is that you're creating this pool of leaders who are not just managing people and who are not just leaders like in the traditional sense, but rather they're creating conditions, environments where people can learn, adapt, and change. Imagine a situation when anybody implements AI. There's a certain aspect of fear in there from the employees, right? But if you go at it as a leader from the perspective that, hey, this is not like a top-down thing, but these are the benefits we expect it's going to bring. Let's make it a shared learning journey. And if you put KPIs instead of looking at, let's say, adoption rates, you look at KPIs like, let's look at the number of insights you uncover from using this tool specifically, right? That it really becomes an atmosphere or an environment where people can thrive and really be comfortable in their skin with that change. And that also brings about the second pillar we have here, which is workforce agility. So focusing on skills, HR being responsible for creating skills and organizational structures that support all of that. And last but not least, it's the progress being translated into measurable business outcomes. DHL did this beautifully. I'll quickly go over this example. I love it because they started out with, let's have like these smart warehouses. We want to increase productivity and we want to increase the job quality for our employees. So the intention wasn't to replace humans, but rather create this collaboration where they introduced these collaborative bots. I think they were calling it cobots or something like that. And in the end, it worked very well because the impact was amazing. Look at that, 30% increase in productivity, super. And of course, the bots had a big role to play in all of this. But the reality was they were really smart. If you dissect the whole thing, you realize they were smart about it in the sense they embedded leadership development in the automation that was going to happen. So they turned their supervisors into adaptive change leaders who could enable their frontline workers to be digital operators. So it became this collaboration where the leaders were able to actually, follow this through. And that meant that in line with that business transformation objective, they changed their leadership academy. They made sure everybody was digital fluent that was involved. They made sure that the leaders had the right capabilities to manage not just the human workforce, but also the bots. So like the hybrid workforce in that sense. So I really think that was like a super cool example to share.
And it's a fantastic example again of how, that technology initiative would never have been successful without the human intervention. And it shows the beauty of when, the human and the technological platform are working hand in hand. It's only going to impact the organization in a positive way. So I think that's a very, very powerful example, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I fell in love with it when I read it. I was like, okay, that's what I'm talking about, right?
Well, to be honest, it doesn't take you much to fall in love with the best practice. So
well, what can I say?
Now, Mara, we're going to shift to this one here, and let's get some audience involvement again. So I'm going to ask them to keep those smartphones out, and let's go back to Slido again. And people are getting the drill. They're doing this very quickly. So if you had to choose one capability to strengthen your HR team today, which would it be? Agility, leadership, or measurement? So agility is the first one that we've got in. And I know you're going to speak to this once we've got a good sample of answers.
I'm actually happy about this response. So
if it stays like that, we can move on.
Oh, we've got some leadership to compete. Yeah.
But agility still leads the way.
That's true. Well, I'm gonna, in the interest of time, I'm just gonna move on as well. But I do think the agility is gonna sort of keep the trend on here as
Don't
we see
speak
more
too
and more
soon.
people.
Leadership's making it. Oh no, okay, maybe you're right. Or what about agile leadership? They go hand in hand, right? So.
Exactly, like merge them together. That's also another one. Well, all of you guys who have responded to agility here, there's another angle that we can speak to, right? Another thing that it becomes really important for HR to look into is to think in systems. Gone are the days where we could do stuff in isolation, or like, hey, I look after talent acquisition, so like, what you do in talent management is kind of none of my business. That doesn't work anymore. And what business is doing, what HR is doing, all of that is one ecosystem, and we need to start thinking about it like that. What one does definitely impacts the other. And that becomes super crucial. And it's really sort of reflected in what Novartis did. It's a famous example. So you might have heard about this as well. Novartis is a top employer. And I had several conversations with them on this. And they were among the pioneers who looked into skills-based organizations, right? And why did they do that? What was the driving force behind it? Of course, there was a goal the business set. And it's like, we want to increase innovation. We want to increase productivity, and we really want to put focus on high value medicines here. So there was a direction that they were given. And that's what prompted them to look into skills rather than roles, because innovation also meant they need to be much more agile in moving people around when needed. So what they ended up doing was precisely that, working with skills profiles rather than roles. And that reduced the number of the time that it took for them to deploy people to different projects across the organization from quarters or months or whatever to merely weeks. And the impact, again, is very clearly visible here. 73% of the employees that used their internal marketplace were less likely to leave. 51% more likely to be promoted. There was much more cross-functional projects. All those are things that feed into the innovation aspect eventually. So again, one of my favorite examples to share. Yet again, we'll have to say that not all HR practices are created equal. So there's always I think 1,000 things you can do, but they're not of equal importance at all. And we want to speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Amara. Some fascinating best practices that you've shared. But before I do our results dashboard demo, I think it's very important that our delegates get a bit of insight into our HR best practice survey, the actual mechanism that we use to survey and audit organizations in terms of their HR practices. So as I mentioned earlier on, this is a global HR best practice survey. So it's the same survey that we use throughout the world, irrespective of what country you operate in. The practices that exist within our survey are applicable to any organization, irrespective of size, sector, country, because you are being measured against globally applicable best practices. So it's made up of 6 core domains that you see on screen, and those 6 core domains are underpinned by 20 HR topics, and you as an HR team are actually measured against 310 globally recognized HR best practices. And when we look at our steer and shape domains, there we look at, what practices HR has in place to support the business strategy as well as its objectives. And this is very much the foundational element to ensure that HR is there to support the business in, achieving whatever it needs to achieve. If you look at the middle layer of attract, develop, and engage, that very much speaks to the employee life cycle, right? So we look at everything that you do in terms of employer branding, attracting talent, onboarding them into the organization, all that beautiful stuff that happens in the middle in terms of development, right the way through to offboarding, when a particular employee does happen to leave your business and, move on to something else. And then the final layer of our survey is what we call the Unite domain. So it's never going to be our responsibility to judge your culture, to say if it's a good or bad culture. That's not what we do. But what we do look at is the practices that you have in place to drive a good, healthy culture within your organization, and how you connect the organization to your employees, and how you allow the employees to feel connected back to the business. So that's very much the survey structure that we have in place. Amara, anything you want to add to that I may have missed?
Well, I was just gonna thanks, Billy. It was a really nice overview of what we have in place. Just to make it a bit real and give an example, like I've been speaking about adaptive leadership. So within our survey, we do have practices that enable that adaptive leadership, right? So when you look at leadership development, what form, like how do you enable it? So we talk about like experiential development. We talk about how you enable leaders to self-reflect, for instance, cohort-based leadership development. So all of those are just examples of how going through the survey helps you look at what actions can be taken. And I think Billy has like a fabulous demo for us.
Fabulous, but let's give it a go. So what you see on screen now is what we call our top employers portal, and this is where the HR team would actually complete the certification process, and once they've got their results, then they would obviously be able to unlock the many benefits that we offer to our clients around the world. And obviously one critical aspect that we give back to participants in our program is that you can actually look at your certification process results once you have concluded that. So let's show you what that looks like. So if I click on to detailed results, up would open my certification performance results that me as a CHRO would be able to dive into. Sorry, my internet's got a little bit of a lag, but we'll get that sorted soonest.
Well, I always say technology is evil, so.
Of course it is. When you're doing a webinar with hundreds of people, it'll say, let me just slow down everything to make your life difficult. So this is what we call our digital results dashboard. So it's a fully integrated results dashboard where you as an HR team would then be able to do a deep dive into your HR practices and how you measure up against our global standard. But before we give you a demonstration of what this results dashboard looks like, we've also got different benchmarking filters that you as an HR team can look at. So it's not like you'll do one static comparison against one particular benchmark. No, you've got seven different types of filters that we actually offer to you as a participant in our program. So if you wanted to compare yourself against the 2,428 organizations that we've certified on a global scale, that's a benchmark comparison that you can do. Of course, you could also segment it based on the region where your organization operates. You could even go deeper and look at the country of operation. You can do an industry sector comparison, workforce structure, employee size, or even look at how you're performing against the really sort of high scoring organizations in our program. So there's 7 different types of benchmarking filters that we offer to our clients. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to pretend that my organization operates in the pharmaceutical space. So what I would then do is I would click on pharmaceuticals, I would click update, and we're a multinational organization. So I want to see how we compare against other certified top employers in the pharmaceutical sector that are sort of global by operation. So as it stands, we currently have 246 organizations that we've certified around the world that operate in the pharmaceutical sector. So now that I've selected my benchmarking comparison, I now want to have a look at my results. So if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, typically our clients participate in our program for multiple years because it gives them an opportunity to do a year-on-year sort of progress and tracking of how they're performing in our program. So when we first joined the program 3 years ago, we achieved an overall score of 78%. And if we look at the most recent certification process, I've seen great growth in my results in that we now have achieved an overall score of 87.17%, which is a remarkable improvement over a couple of years. But of course, I want to compare that against the pharmaceutical benchmark. And the global pharmaceutical benchmark currently stands at 86%. So as a CHRO, I'm delighted to see that we're actually outperforming the global average for pharmaceutical companies that have been certified in the top employers program. But of course, it doesn't stop there. You can go deeper, right? And as I mentioned earlier on, there are 6 core domains that underpin our global HR best practice survey. And the light blue bar is what my organization achieved last year. The dark blue bar is what my organization has achieved this year. And the red dot is, of course, the pharmaceutical benchmark average score. So again, if I'm a CHRO, and if I look at the 6 core domains that we've been measured against, I can see that the domains of steer, develop, and unite, as well as engage, are very, very healthy, in that we're either outperforming the pharmaceutical benchmark or we're pretty much on par with what they're currently doing. However, if I look at the domains of shape and attract, I can see a bit of a white gap between what my organization has scored versus what the pharmaceutical benchmark score currently stands at today. So I can immediately see as a CHRO that these are key domains that we as the HR team need to focus on to further future-proof our people practices. But again, you can go another level deeper. And as I mentioned earlier on, our 6 domains are then underpinned by 20 key HR topics, right? So I'm just going to filter that so it's easier for you as an audience to follow. So again, the blue bars would indicate my organization's score. The red bar would be the pharmaceutical benchmark average. And of course, the gray bar would indicate the delta. So if the delta is on the left-hand side, that means quite simply that the pharmaceutical benchmark is outperforming us on that HR topic. But of course, if the delta is on the right-hand side, that means that we are outperforming the pharmaceutical benchmark. So again, as a CHRO, I've got lots to be happy about here, because we really are doing very, very well in comparison to other pharmaceutical top employers. Now, for the purposes of this example, I'm going to pick employer branding, I'm going to pick talent acquisition, and I'm going to pick onboarding, right? Because those 3 HR topics are very much interlinked and they're very dependent on each other's success. So starting with employer branding, I can see that my organization achieved 95%, and we're actually outperforming the pharmaceutical benchmark by close on 6.50%. So that's a very, very strong performing topic. And if I look at talent acquisition, I can then see that we're also outperforming the pharmaceutical benchmark by, call it, 0.46 percentage points. But when I look at onboarding, now this is a cause for concern, right? Because I'm performing very, very well when it comes to employer branding. I'm scoring very, very well when it comes to talent acquisition. But when it comes to onboarding, I'm nearly 17% behind the pharmaceutical benchmark. Now, that should be a cause for concern, for me as a CHRO, because if my onboarding practices and strategy is not particularly strong, there's every chance that I might end up losing this great talent that I brought to the organization 6 months or 1 year down the line because of the fact that my onboarding process is not particularly strong. So that means I really need to invest a lot of resources, time, and effort into further strengthening this particular key HR topic. So, right, now that I've identified those 3 topics and how I'm performing, and those 3 topics do sit in our attract domain. So let's dive a little bit deeper. So I would click on attract. There you would see the 3 HR topics: employer branding, talent acquisition, and onboarding. So I want to focus on onboarding because that is the one topic where I'm 17 percentage points below the benchmark, right? The pharmaceutical benchmark, to be specific. So I've clicked on onboarding, and now I'm going to be able to look at the practices that the Top Employers Institute measured us on when it came to onboarding. And I'll obviously support you in understanding how to read this data that you see on screen. So this is the best practice that you would have been measured against, and you would have indicated that we either do that practice consistently, inconsistently, or it's not done in our organization. So where you see the tick, that's the answer that we would have given as an HR team. And of course, the red bars indicate the percentage of top employers in the pharmaceutical sector who have got that practice either consistently, inconsistent, or not done. So that's a good practice, and I'm aligned. I've got it consistently in place, and I'm aligned to the pharmaceutical benchmark. But here is one area that we can definitely work on. So in terms of having a defined onboarding journey mapping process, we don't have that in place at the moment. But nearly 58% of the pharmaceutical benchmark do have this in place as a consistently done practice. So I want to learn a little bit more about that practice. So I would hover my mouse over that red bar, and up opens the full definition in terms of what we expect to see in order to have this practice as a consistently done one in your organization. So that is something that me and the HR team need to work on. to further strengthen the onboarding process. So you'd be able to go through every single one of these practices that we would measure you against in onboarding and see how you are tracking in comparison, against other top employers. Amara, anything else you want to add to what I've just shared with the delegates?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking of like our very competitive top employers, right? They always want to. It was like 58% of the benchmark are doing it, and we are not. They'd be like, yeah, we need to be in that 58% in any case.
Correct, and they are very competitive, to say the least. You are right. Yeah, exactly. And obviously, just to close out this demonstration. And again, as a CHRO, right, I've identified that onboarding is a particularly weak, HR topic in our overall organization. But the other thing I should really be concerned about is how we're faring in offboarding or exit management, as it's known to some. And again, there we've achieved 52%, and the pharmaceutical benchmark is sitting at 63%. So we're just under 12% below what other top employers in the pharmaceutical sector are doing. So we might be losing, top talent because of a poor onboarding process, but at the same time, we're not getting that important feedback from them in terms of what is missing from our organization that made you want to leave and go elsewhere. So that would also help further close the loop to further strengthen everything that you're doing from an HR perspective. So I hope that that demonstration gives you some good insight into the richness of data that we could give back to you. But Amara, before I hand over to you, right? So once the CHRO and the other HR leaders have done this deep dive into their sort of performance results, this will obviously help them prioritize what they need to focus on, where they need to further bolster their strategy and where they need to invest their HR budget. But of course, something that's very key for a CHRO is that when they go back and present these results to the wider executive committee, they need to then be able to translate this into business objectives and business outcomes. And this is where we sometimes see the wheels fall off, right? Because of the fact that the CHRO needs to be able to speak the language of the CEO, of the CFO. And I know that you've got some really good insights that you're going to be sharing with us now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Billy, for the demo. And absolutely, we take this one step further. So what you saw on the dashboard was almost like the assessment phase where you get to see where you stand. Now we do focus on how to first help the CHROs take this to the board or speak their language, but help them in, like I've been saying all along, there are always 10,000 things you can work on. How do you select the most important, the most impactful one when it comes to business outcomes? So what we have also done is we link most of our HR practices to business outcomes. And I'm going to show you an example. What you're going to see on the screen is are all the top 13 practices that are shown to have a correlation with revenue growth. So basically what I'm saying is that organizations that are high performers when it comes to revenue growth are more likely to have these practices in place. So these are the domains and the topics you saw Billy walk you through in our dashboard. But let's look at those 13 practices that are linked to the business outcome of revenue growth. So imagine if you're in a situation where your business is saying, this is it, we need to increase our revenue growth. So if you take that as the direction, as your North Star, and you start chopping up what you need to be working on, let me make this even easier for you. So let's look at the top 5 practices who have been shown to sort of indicate a much stronger correlation with the business outcome of revenue growth. So an organization that is performing really well as a high performer is more likely to focus on these 5 practices. Let's look at the purple one here, like purpose measurement scorecard. There's like a 19% correlation here. So if I'm an organization doing really, really well, I'm 19% more likely to focus on this practice. And that automatically helps me go to my board and say, like, hey, people, when we look at our competitors, when we look at high performers around us, this is what they're working on, and we are not. And by the way, the purpose scorecard basically indicates that it's a mechanism internally where you are able to keep tabs on how your internal stakeholders, like your employees, your leaders, etc., are in line or not in line with your organizational purpose. So that's basically just to give some context to that practice. So that's revenue growth, but we also have those correlations with profit growth, for example. Again, our favorite purpose scorecard shows up there too. I'm not advocating for that practice in any form, but it shows up quite a lot. So there must be something there, right? And the third one here, really like a business metric that we look at, is also market share. So growth in market share. There are also these top 7 practices that are very, very strongly correlated to that one. So it's almost like all those colorful wires that you see flowing through. It's like you're putting a house together, and you're linking everything that has to do with your human capital within the organization, and you're putting the connections in place to all those 3 very important business metrics. But that's not all. We also correlate these to very important HR practices like internal promotion rates, employee engagement, and talent retention. So all of that, when done well and focused on and prioritized appropriately, does lead to transformative growth. And this is where our top employers really take advantage of the program, because you've got 220 different topics, right? And you'll have like many different things to work on. But what will move the needle for you in your context? These business outcomes help you steer that direction.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And anything to add, Billy, before I move on to the...
No, nothing more to add. I mean, other than that, what you've just shared now really helps prioritize what HR needs to focus on while getting the wider commitment and backing of the executive committee, because you've been able to speak in their language.
Exactly.
Really, really nice.
Yeah, we found that to be very, very strong and much appreciated by top employers. I want to quickly talk about a case that was submitted to us, and it was about streamlining leadership development. I've put together some of the things that can be done to do this, especially in the transformative situation. But I'll probably just go over a couple of things also in the interest of time. I know everybody's super busy at all times, so not to keep you longer than it's needed. But if I were to pick one thing that can help streamline leadership development, is to stop thinking about leadership development in general, because that's really like the most common factor we see among organizations. But you need to shift it towards thinking about developing leaders for specific business outcomes. I'll go back to the DHL example. It was very specifically trying to transform a business objective, and that enabled them to shift gears and then put in a leadership academy that spoke to that transformative change. I think that's something that people really missed. And I'm sure you've heard of Novartis's unbossed transformation as well, where they killed all the layers, made the organization flat. Again, going back to the fact that they wanted to drive innovative culture. Obviously, like if you're listening and you had submitted this case, I would love to understand more of your context and be able to speak to what more can be done, because we had a bit limited information here. But thank you in any case for submitting your question. I'm sure many are thinking about it as well.
Agreed. Cool.
Looking at the chat, we have like a few minutes left. If there are any burning questions, we'd be happy to take them. As you can tell, we chat, we talk a lot, Billy and I, so it's usually not a good decision for time to put us together.
I thought we've done quite well today. No, but I mean, I have seen a couple of people ask, are they going to get a copy of the recording as well as the slides? Absolutely, that will be shared with you. Mohammed said, really insightful discussion. Loved how you connected HR strategy directly to measurable business outcomes, especially the link between people strategy and leadership impact. Great session so far. Thank you, Mohammed. Humbled by your feedback. Mondli said, I'm excited to see real solutions that link HR performance, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the business outcomes aspect. So Mondli, I hope we gave you some food for thought and a bit of inspiration. But yeah, thank you very much for the kind words about the session. We love that. I don't think there are any questions, but of course, we did share our LinkedIn profiles at the beginning of the session. So please do connect with me or Amara, and you're more than welcome to share your comments and share your questions with us. We would love to interact with you on that social media platform. And we always love to share a bit of a parting takeaway with you. So we're transforming, but we don't know if it's working. And I'm sure that's a question many of you will ask yourselves. But the good news is certification and fact-based data can help you solve that, right? It acts like a GPS. It assesses where you are today, it benchmarks you against the best, and it guides you towards a measurable improvement. So as we come to the end of today's LinkedIn Live session, I would like to thank all of you for obviously joining today. We hope you found the discussion between myself and Amara valuable, and that you leave with great ideas that you can take back into your own world of work and hopefully implement. We will be sharing several links with you. As you see the QR codes come on screen, the first QR code is our event survey. So it's the first time that we've ever tried a session of this nature, and we would really love to hear your valuable feedback in terms of how you enjoyed it, what you didn't like about it, what you'd like to see more of. Any constructive feedback is more than welcome. And then the second QR code will take you to our Top Employers Institute demo and contact request page. So please fill in your details, and one of our lovely team members would get in touch with you and love to have a sort of more in-depth conversation around your HR challenges, your objectives, and obviously how our certification program can support you on an organizational level. We've also popped both links in the comment section. So if you are joining us from your phone, you can obviously access those links there if you're unable to scan the QR code. So do look out for an email from us tomorrow. It'll contain the recording of today's session, as well as the slides, in case you want to revisit it or share it with your wider HR team if you think that they would derive good value from it. As always, a huge thanks of appreciation to the lovely Amara Naeem. Always a pleasure co-presenting with you, my dear. So thank you very much for your fascinating inputs as always. We wish you all a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you again for more conversations of this nature. And as HR professionals, keep doing your job and building a better world of work, because your impact is very much felt by every single employee in your organization. So take care and have a great day further. Thank you.
Thank you all.